Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 4 of Stand Up and Stand Out. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Nikki Green, and we are mixing things up this season. With my new book, Chameleon Mindset, launching, I want to share more of the book's concepts with all of you. I have also been blessed to expand my network throughout the podcast community and to other inspirational speakers. I want to bring more guests on to discuss these important topics together, so we're going to mix it up, no more interview format, and we're going to have some fun. So next up, we're going to do a few fun episodes. Hope you enjoy them. And don't forget to give us a like, a follow on your favorite podcast platform. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world or when you're listening to this episode. I'm Nikki Green, the host of Stand Up and Stand Out, and we are on Season 4. Today we're going to talk about risk tolerance, and we have two amazing guests for you today. Terri-Ann Richards is here to share some of her expertise, and the wonderful Alli Privitt. So I will go ahead and hand the floor over to them and let them do a quick intro so you can get to know them better. Alli, why don't you give us a start?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Nikki, and excited to talk all about risk. I think in alignment with that topic, my background is in teaching, but I started my own business, and it's all about personal growth and development and taking risks. I'm a skydiver, and that has been like the most transformative thing in terms of changing my life and the trajectory. But we can kind of get into that later if it goes in. But that's just a little bit about my background in alignment with this podcast.
That's fantastic. My niece wants to go skydiving. She's 23, so I might send her up your way because we're just down in Chicago. Because I'm not doing it. That's one that's definitely past my risk tolerance. Awesome. And Terri-Ann Richards, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. I am a serial entrepreneur with almost 2 decades of experience behind me, so definitely jump into risk. I am the epitome of jumping off the cliff and building the parachute on the way down. The last 6 years, I've been coaching awesome folks just like myself, so ambitious leaders and entrepreneurs who are trying to make a big print on this big, beautiful world. And I have been skydiving, but I wouldn't do it again. It was sort of like, do it once, not going to do that again. 10,000 feet in the air. It's a little much.
It's okay.
Hopefully we'll take our audience slowly through this and we won't fully push them off the cliff during the episode. We'll inch them a little bit at a time. So one of the key philosophies as a part of Chameleon Mindset is risk tolerance. And I first started studying risk tolerance when I was a financial planner just out of my MBA. And of course, that was sort of the level of risk that people were willing to take to achieve the goal of their retirement. So you put in a lot of factors, age, how close they are to retirement, how much they're making, and things like that. But as I got older, I started understanding that this topic was so relevant to other aspects of life, and it was something that made me more resilient to change and things that were happening. So I think it's a critical topic for us to talk about. And Alli, I know you do some wonderful exercises with your company. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you help people deal with risk and fear in their lives?
So such a great topic. I think risk is, it's wherever is outside your comfort zone. So it's really kind of identifying where do you lack confidence? Where do you struggle or get in a mental loop? And you talk about that in your book, about just, you get this analysis paralysis, and it's all about identifying that. It's usually not what you think it is, but sometimes. So what I started off helping people with is getting people confident in the gym space or public speaking as a teacher, right? It's getting students comfortable in the classroom and taking academic risks or taking personal risks, something that stretches you. And it just kind of evolves. It has evolved for me personally in my business with people wanting to change where they live. Change careers or do something they've never done before, check off a bucket list item, go on an adventure, travel and, literally go swimming with sharks or jump out of airplanes, et cetera, et cetera. Like personal growth happens beyond your comfort zone, and it's all of that is just having someone to kind of guide and ebb you through that. Most people benefit from that coaching relationship and kind of, asking those questions and pushing you, guiding you through some of that.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing I've noticed is, in general, I feel I'm more on the, risk tolerant side and ready to go tackle things. But the times when I've been more resistant or more afraid of change is when I wasn't in a safe environment and I didn't have a good support system. And Terri-Ann, you talk about kind of 3 key characteristics that resilient people possess. So maybe you can share a little bit about those kind of key factors.
100%. So I think, resilience it's definitely a topic that we hear a lot about, especially coming out of these last few years. And I think the reality of it is we all have the ability to be resilient. It's already inside of us, but we need to be able to lean into the uncomfortable, right? Lean into the fact and adapt that it's inevitable that things are going to go sideways, go wrong, things are going to change, they're going to tweak, they're going to iterate. And so I think we need to, sort of, you speak a little bit about this into your book about, having that mindset of having a growth mindset. So understanding that things are going to ebb and flow. And so I think first and foremost, we just have to accept what is, right? When it comes to resilience. I think the other thing that's really important is you have to have the ability to tweak and use introspection. So for me, having that ability to go inwards and watch what's working and what's not, again, all kind of flowing with that, having that growth mindset, looking forward and understanding that what is right now isn't always going to be the same. So if things go wrong, then go inwards and say, okay, what's working, what's not? And then it's making the adjustments and going back at it. Sort of like that age-old story of jumping back on the horse, right? Just go at it again and try it again. And I think it's sort of like going to the gym. And, when you first go to the gym, you can only lift a 5-pound weight. And then, over time, you get to a 10-pound weight and you get to a 15-pound. And, lo and behold, all of a sudden you're at a 50-pound weight. It's not that all of a sudden it became easy right away. It's that you do the hard things, you tweak, you iterate, you lean into it. You accept that where I am right now isn't where I'm always going to be. And I lean into that. And by nature, that allows resilience to sort of breathe life through you and in you.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really, one of my favorite things about this is there's been a couple different movies on it, but like the butterfly effect of people get paralyzed sometimes by the idea of too many paths. Like if I go this way, I'm locked into it, when we know for sure every path has multiple twists and turns throughout. The sliding doors one I really liked with Gwyneth Paltrow, which is like in the 90s. But it was like if she got on the train, one thing happened in her life and she didn't get on the train. And I think a lot of people have the fear that like, oh, they've got to pick the right path, instead of, hey, this is a journey and you have to kind of be along for the ride. So Alli, I know you help people through this, kind of taking that first step, sometimes all the way out of an airplane. But how do you get people to kind of start taking those small steps towards being uncomfortable, to getting that into comfort?
So it's really about that initial, yes, I'm willing. Yes, I'm okay to start. And it's like it's a shift for some, like it's someone accepting an invitation to just be uncomfortable, and to be open-minded to doing something that they previously wouldn't have. So it does start with kind of leaning into a yes mindset, even when you're a little uncomfortable, because when you start doing that and you're open to change and you're open to possibilities, you find out that it's not this butterfly effect where your life is drastically like overhauled from a decision, but rather it opens up all these possibilities and your mind to just mindsets and possibilities that weren't there before you were kind of saying no. So it's getting you out of your mind. And usually it starts with like a really small like breadcrumb or activity. And you look back after like a week or a month and you're like, wow, like now this is integrated. What else can I do? So typically it does start smaller than people even want to. Like, so if we're just talking about like a gym situation, sometimes it's literally just getting someone to show up to the gym and lace up their shoes. And that is the first step. And just, they're not doing anything in the gym. They're just getting themselves there. And sometimes people will be like, oh, well, that's not enough or whatever, but maybe it is, because that then opens the idea for them to get comfortable in that space. And sometimes we want to go too big too fast, which is why I think like New Year's resolutions really, burn people out, because they just want to go like so heavy, way too fast, that they think of life as a sprint and it's really a marathon. And so incremental changes over time are way more sustainable, and you make long-term growth rather than a explosion burst that flashes for a second and then dies out. So it's about teaching people how to do that.
I think that's great, because that makes it so much more sustainable. If people put all their eggs sort of in the same basket and they're all working towards just this one goal, and if I can just do this one big goal, everything else is going to fall into place. That's rarely how it works, because one, that goal probably isn't exactly as you envision it anyways, but there's going to be a lot of smaller side goals that you need to achieve. And if that's a work goal or a personal goal, like, you have to keep balance in all sides. And I think that incremental little steps is such an important thing of just starting to make that movement. And for everybody, it's different. I think getting in the gym is a perfect, like, just get familiar with it. Just walk around, say hi, make some friends, right? Like, it doesn't have to be this dramatic, oh, okay, I'm going to lose 50 pounds overnight and be in super great shape. And, we get too hung up on some of the big goals and we forget to just actually make progress, right? Yeah. So, Terri-Ann, one of the things I know that's really difficult for a lot of leaders is to really showcase this to others, because it takes a level of vulnerability to be able to really be out there and show that, hey, I have fear too, or anxiety, or, I want to do something new. I think leaders a lot of times have this persona that, oh, well, everything's fine. And, I'm just able to go tackle it every day. But I'm sure you've come across quite a few people that definitely are still working towards some of those goals. So maybe talk about, how you help people not just be vulnerable to achieve their own goals, but also to inspire others around them, in their team or in their companies.
100%. So I actually look at it as, leadership is like being a lighthouse, right? And I sort of contribute. I'm on the Bay of Fundy, it's really foggy here. And if I was in the Bay of Fundy in a canoe and it was foggy, God forbid, and I was trying to get to the shore, I can't get to the shore if it's foggy and I don't know my way. But when you have a leader who's a lighthouse, who can lead the way through vulnerability, through lessons, through teachings, all of a sudden I'm in the fog. I'm trying to figure out how to hit my goals, how to hit my KPIs this quarter. But I've got a leader that's saying, hey, 2 years ago, this is what happened. Actually, 3 weeks ago, this is what happened. Here's what I did. Because I don't think it's so much about sharing our war wounds. Like, I know a lot of people think that's what vulnerability is. It's like sharing your story of overcoming. It's like when I went up Mount Everest, fell back, and then I got back up. And I didn't get all the way to the peak, but I got 3/4 of the way. When you can share those kind of stories with people, what it does is say, hey, I'm human too. I might have this role, this title. I'm human too, but at the end of the day, I make mistakes. I fall back 10 feet. Here's what I did to overcome it. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. And it kind of gives people permission to mess up. Right? It gives people permission to mess up. It gives people permission to, take a step back and to iterate and to tweak, like I said before. But it also gives them permission to say, hey, this is what's working and this is what's not working. Right?
Yeah, I love that visual analogy of the lighthouse. And I've been in a canoe in the fog in San Francisco Bay, so I can also go, where is the shore? Which way am I supposed to go? It's time for us to take a quick commercial break and grab some water. We'll be right back with more from our guests. Hi everyone, Nikki Green here, and I am here to tell you that Chameleon Mindset is on its way. If you'd like to learn more about the Chameleon Mindset book, the online course that'll help keep you motivated and doing some of the fun Karate Kid exercises, go to chameleonmindsetbook.com and you'll find more information about pre-sales, bonuses, and so much more. We are back, and we're going to continue talking about risk tolerance. But Alli, why don't you give us some insight into sort of the other side, which is risk intolerance? We definitely find many people crossing in our paths with both sides of the coin. So share us some of your insights there.
Yeah, so just kind of hitting back to what Terri-Ann was saying earlier about getting started, and I forgot how you worded it exactly, but the picture that came to mind, the lighthouse, that's what it was this idea of also leadership and whatnot is teaching people how to eat elephants. And it's one bite at a time, in case you're wondering. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because risk tolerance is being able to in my own practice, in my own life, it really is kind of upping the ante on something you were before unwilling to do. And it's like a muscle that you have to exercise. So I can remember when I was in college, I was going on this trip to the Dominican Republic, and it was my first international trip. And yes, I was meeting people that I knew from college and everything. We were doing research, but I'd never traveled like by myself on a plane internationally with a passport and like all this stuff. And it was like a risk to do this. And I remember just being wildly uncomfortable the entire time. And, I was like getting there and like, being in a different country and doing all these things and going to these small communities and talking to people I didn't know. And I would say that like by the end of the trip, it was like I had kind of dissipated. Nothing really seemed that risky. All right. It was like a buildup of tolerance that I had versus some people I have found they literally live life with blinders on, and they don't even recognize like their intolerance to risk, I guess. You almost need something to like break you out of your mold. You need to put yourself in new situations in order to kind of develop that muscle. If you just do the same thing over and over again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think that's like who we're talking to here on this podcast, is people who want to learn and grow and like adapt, right? So chameleons adapt, and they put themselves in new situations in order to do that work. And I think that is just really important if you are trying to evolve, adapt, grow, is you're going to have to build that risk tolerance muscle. It's a little example, but it can start like with something as like a trip to, you've never been somewhere before, and like that is uncomfortable to you. It can be starting a new job, all of that. So that's something I wanted to add.
I love that. And throughout the book, I make the comparison between the zebra and the chameleon. And the zebra are those people where they think they've kind of figured it out. Like, I'm just going to stand out. I'm going to, this is what I believe in. And this is how things work. The whole world, I know it all, I've done it all. And many people get locked into this at a very young age. And it's quite concerning because it does make them very risk intolerant. It means they just can't figure out that there's even a possibility of something else. And it closes them off to so much of the world. I think traveling is a great example and something I always encourage people to do. And that could be as much as, going to the next province or state, away from you, or that can be going internationally. There are so many great experiences of really being uncomfortable, one, just being in a place you don't know, but what if you don't speak the language or you don't understand the culture, and really starting to immerse yourself and understand those things. So those were great examples. Thank you. Thank you, Alli. So one of the things, Terri-Ann, I want to talk about is the fact that, sometimes people do risky things or they push themselves, but it's past a point kind of self-care, or they kind of forgot what the goal is. Or sometimes somebody else is setting the goal and they don't really have an emotional attachment to it. So either they do it and they just don't care, or they never actually finish the project. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the fact that goals should probably be making us happy?
So I think there's a saying that I learned, I think last year, and I love this because I keep it as a mantra, but I said it, I did it, I said it, I did it, I said it, I did it. And so I think what happens is you listen to a podcast, you read a book. Anyone ever read the 5 a.m. Club and think, oh, so to be successful, I need to get up at 5 a.m., right? And so we set goals that are not actually in alignment with who we are. They're not connected to what our natural state or our natural being would be. Like, I am not a 5 a.m. Club girl. And so the way we tether a cord between our happiness and success, right? So if I get up at 5 a.m. 7 days a week, then that means I'm going to be a success. And so what happens is, I said it, I did it, I said it, I did it, is how we feel confident. It's how we feel good about ourselves. It's how we have that constant state of joy. And if I say I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every day, and I don't because I'm not a 5 a.m. girl, then I failed myself, which lessens my confidence, and it's affecting my overall worth, my overall feeling of myself. And so I didn't say it and did it. I said it and I didn't do it. I failed myself. And so I think the question we always have to ask ourselves is, scale of 1 to 10, how confident am I in achieving this goal? Scale of 1 to 10, how committed am I to achieving this goal? And is this in alignment with who I am as a person? We talk about SMART goals a lot, but really, like, is it in alignment with me as a human, my truth, right? If I say, you ask somebody, what's the most important thing in your life? They're like, oh, my kids, my spouse, maybe their health, whatever. And then they go set a goal to radically transform their business or their career, where it's going to take 70, 80 hours a week. Well, is that in alignment with what you just said was your priority? And so the problem is we're forever competing because we've been conditioned to think there's work life, professional life, and then there's this personal life. No, I'm sorry. It's just one big life. Like, I don't have two of me. There's just one of me. And so I think that's like a natural path to disaster, unhappiness, lack of success, lack of fulfillment, and that feeling like I'm not resilient, right? I can't persevere because we're literally setting ourselves up for failure. And so I think it's really important that you only set goals that are actually important to you as a person, that are attainable, they're realistic, but they got to be in alignment with your truth.
I have like
that was perfect. Go for it, Alli.
I have like the best example of this in my own experience that really was like transformative for me. So I realized I had a problem when I was teaching. So I was an educator, high school chemistry teacher for 10 years. And as each year progressed, I realized there were two different versions of me. There was summer Alli and there was school year Alli. And as that chasm widened, I really didn't like the differences in who those people were. And so I needed to make a drastic change and figure out which of those was in a more alignment. In order to do that, I had to take a risk of leaving the classroom, so to speak, starting something new, right? Like, especially for educators, it can be particularly difficult because it's like a calling and a mantra, and it's like you do it for life. It's not like the normal workforce in a lot of ways where people are more like they flow and dip and dive to different things. But in order for me to know like which of those personas or if neither of them were like who I really wanted to be, I needed to literally jump off the cliff and say, I'm going to take a year at least off of teaching in order to kind of discover like, who am I? I don't want to be a different person. And I think that can be something like for your listeners, Nikki, is, like, do you feel like you have different kind of modalities or personas or people, and like, are they in alignment? Like, are you reaching your goals, and is it in is it in harmony? Is it synchronized, or is it discombobulated? Is it in different spaces? Because that can just be a really good like clue, like maybe I do need a change and I need to do something different. So it's just like a good echo chamber to kind of think about that in terms of where you might be, whoever's listening to this, wherever you might be in your own journey.
Yeah, that's great. And I know it's going to resonate with a lot of listeners because we do have a lot of teachers and educators that listen in, and because they're also trying to help this next generation to better understand. And again, through leadership, showing some of that vulnerability of even them doing their own searching. And I know we're losing a lot of great teachers right now because they've had a very difficult time during the pandemic of trying to juggle so many things. And I really hope that we start to find a better way, a better path towards educating people and helping people find that balance early on, so it's not something we're all struggling with as adults, to get back in that harmony and peace for our lives. Well, time flies when we're having fun. It is time for us to go. But before we do, I do want to give you each a chance to let the listeners know where they can find a little bit more about you or any cool projects you have going on that you'd like to share with them. So, Alli, why don't you sign us off there first?
Perfect. Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Alli Privitt. On Instagram is my playground, My Friend Alli, and my website's www.myfriendalli.com. Easy to find. If you are looking to, get out of your comfort zone, if you want to jump out of an airplane, or you just want to do something risky, I not only do I can host you on that, I can coach you, but I also have a beautiful bed and breakfast in northern Wisconsin, a retreat center, to really get you out in nature and just come up and visit, and we will push you to wherever you want to kind of adventure, so to speak.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love being outdoors. I grew up near Lake Tahoe in the Sierras on the West Coast, and maybe with our Chameleon community, we might be able to plan a retreat in the future. So you guys stay tuned, and we'll keep talking to Alli about that. It's a very close drive from Chicago, so you can come visit me first, and then we'll go see Alli. Well, Terri-Ann, Canada's not that far, and I do plan to come visit with the book tour. But Terri-Ann, why don't you let us know where we can find you and any cool stuff you have coming up?
Awesome. So my playground is LinkedIn. So Terri-Ann Richards on LinkedIn at Terri-Ann Richards. And my newest book, Success Takes Courage. And really it's just all about, I think a lot of us ambitious leaders have already found sort of that pinnacle of success in our professional careers. But for some darn reason, we're all just unhappy, unfulfilled, and just not really satisfied. And so I'd like to take an inside out approach of finding both happiness and success. And so Success Takes Courage sort of takes you through that framework, that roadmap. So play with me on LinkedIn, purchase the book, and learn how to be both happy and successful.
Beautiful. Can't wait to read it. I'm looking forward to some quiet time over the holidays. I've got a nice stack of books I'm planning to read, and it'll inspire my next book or podcast or whatever else I'm doing in the next year. So, all right, everybody. Well, this is the end of this episode. You're going to continue learning more about Chameleon Mindset over season 4 here. I'm excited to have such amazing guests with deep expertise on these topics. Thank you so much to Terri-Ann Richards for joining us, and Alli Privitt for sharing your expertise. Thanks, guys, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.